So here we are in the spreadsheet, back in the spreadsheet again. So this is where I left off before. You can see here in column B that we've got the sales staff, or the consultants, and each one of these consultants has a corresponding, if I go across, total bonus which we calculated previously. So what we want to do now is basically use a sumif to go along and see each one of these sales staff and add their appropriate total sales to give us a total for each one of these sales guys, right? So here we go. Now remember, sumif uses three parameters. So we'll go back to the dashboard here, and here we have our consultants listed. So we want to do a running total for everything that Kit has achieved, Jessica, and so forth, corresponding in here as a total bonus payment for this staff, right? So let's put the sumif in. I'll go insert function, and I'll go sumif, go, and I'll double click the sumif, right? So now what I'm actually doing, what I will be doing, is I will use the three parameters as we explained just a minute ago. So the range here means where am I going to look for Kit in a list, right? So I have to highlight the list that I'll be using. So it was back in Q2, and I know the list of agents was from B2, and I can go down here to B33, and notice I've highlighted as a relative reference. Now we don't want to keep it as a relative reference here. We want to, remember, lock this region so that if we do any kind of fills, it won't move from this area, right? So this column has to be locked as an absolute. So I'm going to click function 4 key. Okay, and I know that I have a sum range which has to be identical in dimension, but I have to highlight where is the area that I want to add if I find Kit or Jessica. So I'll click into this area, into the sum range, and I'll go back to my sheet, and I know that my sum range was the total bonus area, right? So I can go over to total bonus, and I'll highlight, let's go back to the top, highlight there and go all the way down to 33. You notice now I've got all the bonus areas highlighted, and the same happens here. We have to make it absolute, so I'll go click F4. On the Mac, obviously, you might have to type in the $V, $2s, and so forth. Now the function hasn't finished there. Remember, the important parameter is to pick what are we looking for, right? So I want the criteria to be one of these agents' names. Don't type it in, because remember, that's not the professional way. What we want to do is actually click on a cell to use a reference for that agent, right? So I won't type Kit or Jessica here. I will actually go and click on the appropriate cell. So I'll click in criteria, and I know I'm looking for Kit. If I want Kit, I would have to click on D15 here. So click D15. Now you notice this one's still relative. We don't want to lock this either, because when we do the fill, we want it to we want the function to actually be pointing to the relative cell as we go along, right? So the criteria should not be locked. Okay, maybe in some special events, maybe you do, but in this particular case, we want to do a fill, so we leave it as relative and not absolute. Secondly, you can see that the function's actually worked, right? So it's actually found the total for Kit already for us. So we're fairly confident it's already working. Let's try and see. Go OK. There's the total for Kit that the sumif has actually already calculated. Now we can just fill across, and we can see here, if I double click on this guy, we know that the criteria here, D15, is actually going to point to kit. So the range here, which is locked, the search range and the sum range, will use kit D15 as the parameter to look for, right? Let's try the corresponding here. Yes, and we can see that it's working correctly because the range is still the same, but the criteria where it's looking for is actually looking for Jessica now, right? And let's just do one more, and there we go, and we can see that the functionality is exactly the way we want it, right? So now we can see that the bonuses for each particular staff has been calculated for us using the sumif. Now, just to add one more thing is it's much nicer or cleaner if I go here to the sumif. Rather than using these dollar and all that column stuff, you should be familiar with already now, is rather than putting these coordinates in that kind of fashion, it's much easier and much better for us if we actually use a thing called, and it's called range names, right? So effectively we can replace this whole string with a label, right, which is called a range name in Excel. So if I go back here, I can actually go back to my data and I can look at my consultants here, the list, and I can highlight the list, and here I can actually use the name box to apply a range name, which is effectively a label, to that whole area, right? So I can click in here and I can actually call it consultant and list, right? You notice the range name, I do not use spaces. You don't use spaces, and what I've tried to do is just use capital letters to highlight the next word within the label, right? So I've called it consultant list. Remember here, don't click away. You have to click or have to type enter so that Excel remembers that label. So enter, right? Now if I click away somewhere, I can actually go to my name box and I can see, there's my new label. If I click on the label, it will highlight where that area or region is assigned to. So I've said consultant list, and I can do the corresponding part here and say highlight my total bonuses, and also give this a label which we can later use in the formulas. So I can say consultant bonus, right? And don't forget, have to hit enter so it remembers it, and no spaces in the label name, right? So enter, it's consultant bonus. Now just to test it, I've got consultant bonus, consultant list. I can go to the bonus, there we go. It highlights the region for me, so I can now effectively use these labels within my formula. So if I go back to my dashboard, I can now go to my sumif. I'll go back into sumif, and I can replace these ranges with the labels or the range names that I use. Consultant list, and I can replace this guy with consultant bonus. And you notice it's actually already picked the areas, and the beauty of it is I don't have to remember all the dollar rubbish or the dollars as well. So say OK, and you notice it's still worked out the values correctly. And have a look at the function up here. No more silly dollars and all that sort of stuff to try and lock things, and I can even fill right across, and you'll see the function now is using up here, the function up here is using the labels or the range names rather than the dollar stuff, which makes your life much easier later on when you get more proficient with Excel. Question here is, how do I manipulate or change these labels? Well, you can go to formulas and formula name manager, right? here, and you can see I've got lists of the labels which are available within this spreadsheet to use in formulas. So I can go into the list and I can modify the the referencing here if I wish in the name manager. Okay, I'm fairly certain in on the Macs it's under I think it's data define names. You'd be looking for this particular guy here in on the Macs rather than name manager. So it's define name. Okay, right. Close here. All right, that's the bit for sumif.